Good morning, everybody. We're coming to you live from our South Carolina Live Line Training Center, and it's starting to warm up. It's sun's coming out. We got nice, beautiful blue skies here in South Carolina today, and we got Mr. Derek Sang with Bulwark protective clothing, arc flash, fire resistant, or arc rated fire resistant clothing, and he's going to come for you today, sharing some lineman safety national webinar 010. This will be episode 010. And Derek's been preparing for this and excited about coming here, representing his product line and coming with technical training for you all. It's what he does, technical trainer. And so we're going to have him speak. But real quick, we want to talk about what we're doing here as a grassroots line team, a safety coalition nationwide. We have over 4,100 registered members now throughout the country. And we just received yesterday an endorsement, as you can see right up here at the top, with XL Energy. They just endorsed us, and you can see all the other endorsers. And this is only just now 8 months old. We've been doing this for 8 months, and this is sweeping across the United States. And what we're doing is we are forming a coalition that is willingly coming together and freely sharing their expertise and their particular component or niche of safety for our most wonderful industry. And you can contact me at safetytrainer@beermeters.com. And you can also, to register, text Bierer, capital all the letters, to 22828. Okay, I'm Brent Jeffries, Vice President, Field Operations, Safety Trainer, Speaker. So just get a hold of us, register, and once you're registered, you receive all these videos, all these safety training videos for your line crews at no cost, zero. It's all at no cost, from the very best of the best, giving back freely to their beloved industry. So just get on board. You'll receive, once registered, you'll receive the live line links, all the recordings, the opportunity to actually visit here during the recordings and participate live here in South Carolina. So you're welcome to do this. It's all free, like I said, and we're coming together as a line team. All right? So with that, I just want to also show from Bulwark, got some nice FR clothing, and I got some nice jeans. I'm not wearing them now, but they are very comfortable. So I appreciate that, Derek. And so with that, we'll give it to Mr. Derek. All right?
Thank you, Brent. And good morning, good afternoon, live or recorded. I greatly appreciate you all taking your time to learn a little bit more about flame-resistant and arc-rated clothing and building a program for your teams. And as Brent said, being part of the electrical culture of safety is very, very exciting. As Brent said, 8 months ago, grassroots, really starting to grow, and the key is getting that information out to our industry free of charge, and that's what really intrigued us and wanted us to be part of it. So with that, let's get started. We're going to talk about building and implementing a flame-resistant arc-rated program for the arc flash hazard. That being said, give you a little bit of background about myself. 25 years now in this market, doing and talking about flame-resistant and arc-rated clothing. I like to tell folks I got started back when you could get any style, any color of navy blue Nomex coverall that you wanted. And in fact, my audience that I'm talking to today, you all weren't even adopting flame-resistant clothing at that time 25 years ago. And thankfully, here we are today with getting shirts, pants, and coveralls onto people's backs who are exposed to short-duration thermal exposures like arc flash. So the proper selection of PPE is always very important. And when you think about PPE in general, all the way from the top of your head to your boots, it's all purposefully built. So what are the hazards? Well, a lot of hazards are pretty easy. Things can fall from the sky and hit me on the head, I get a hard hat. Stuff spinning around and can get inside my eyes, safety glasses. Over 185 decibels on the job floor, hearing protection. I drop really, really heavy stuff onto my feet where I need more than steel toes, I get metatarsal protection. If I have a 200 amp disconnect that can result in an arcing fault that produces heat, light, and energy and can ignite my clothing, now you have clothing that has PPE, purposely built to self-extinguish, thus save your life. I tell folks that we don't make shirts, pants, and coveralls. We just happen to make life-saving devices that look like shirts, pants, and coveralls. My goal is for you never have to use my garments for what we built it for. We built it to save your life in an arcing fault by not catching fire and continuing to burn. So I don't want you using it for what I built it for. But that being said, let's look at what we have to do in order to use this stuff correctly. So first and foremost, I always ask my electrical community when I'm talking to my folks out in the field, what is your hazard? And I'll get things like, well, it's either an arc flash or a flash fire. I either have a short duration thermal exposure from an arcing fault or a hydrochemical like propane, for example. Is that really your hazard? Well, most people would say, yeah, that is. But if you really think about it, that's not the hazard we're protecting you against. We are protecting you against what? Clothing ignition. Clothing ignition is really the hazard. Clothing ignition is what causes catastrophic body burn. Catastrophic body burn is what leads to life-altering potential injuries and leads to fatality. If I eliminate clothing ignition, there's no fatality. If I can mitigate those burn injuries, we're going to completely alter the sequence of events that could potentially cause serious life-altering circumstances. So why is flame-resistant clothing needed? As we said, most severe burns and all fatalities are caused by clothing ignition. By taking that out of the equation, I take something that's potentially fatal and I make it absolutely survivable. Body area under non-FR, okay? Clothing is often burned more severely than exposed skin. Think about it. We have instances where someone was wearing a 100% cotton t-shirt, aka fuel. They'll get first and second degree burns on the exposed area and catastrophic third degree burns because the clothing caught fire and continued to burn. Think about it this way. If you have a piece of equipment that is under an arcing fault, closes in 6 cycles. That's 1/10 of a second, very short duration. Now, if I catch your clothing on fire, I take something that was 1/10 of a second long, and now I have extended that to what? 30, 40, 50, 60 seconds plus. The amount of time it's going to get that fuel off of me or that fuel is going to be burned off of me. That's where we get all the injuries. This is not your hazard, but it gives you a good visualization of what we're talking about. This is fuel, aka non-FR fabrics, that's been exposed, in this case, to a 3-second flash fire. But as you can see, as I'm continuing to talk, the hazard is long over. The experiment has ceased at 3 seconds. What is happening there is clothing fire. That's what we're preventing from happening by having the appropriate flame-resistant arc-rated clothing deployed properly, worn properly, in good working condition. So this is what we're taking out of the equation. How long has that been now? 15, 20 seconds. Think of all the injury that's occurring that has nothing to do with the initial hazard. Let's put that into your world. This is a Faraday cage. This is a controlled arc. It's actually just a small piece of wire in between 2 electrodes. And we see instantaneous clothing ignition. Now, on the right-hand side is the ideal outcome in that hazard. Preferably, we don't ever want to be in the hazard. But the ideal outcome is that garment putting itself out. On the left-hand side, you see we are still burning. We're still incurring injury. In fact, if you look at where your breathing apparatus is in this scenario, and if you don't know what that is your mouth and your nose. Your mouth and nose, your respiratory system is inside a hot fire environment. Think of the injuries that are being occurred there, and that has nothing to do with the arc. The arcing fault is long over. That little piece of wire between those electrodes is consumed. It's done. All the injury that's happening on the left is because the clothing caught fire. by changing that scenario, we dramatically change the outcome. With that, we need to understand we're not protecting against all the other nastiness that's happening inside an arcing fault. All we are doing is self-extinguishing. Now, these fabrics today are usually a combination of natural fibers and synthetics. Natural fibers for moisture management, synthetics for durability and strength. They're designed to limit, notice I said not eliminate injury. How badly hurt are you going to be? No idea. Each event in and of itself is its own event. How close were you? How long did it last? What other extenuating circumstances? We can't predict. But we can mitigate injury by not catching fire and continuing to burn. Survival, extent of injury, all those things are depending on how good your flame-resistant arc-rated clothing is and how well you took care of it, and more importantly, did you wear it correctly the day of? It's really important to understand the difference between primary and secondary. Our garments are what we call secondary protected. Okay? Primary, the easiest analogy I can give you is think of a firefighter. I've donned the lower half and the upper half of my special turnout gear, bunker gear, whatever your terminology you're comfortable with. Big red truck, flashing red lights, I roll up on my structural fire. As I hop off of my vehicle, before I go into that burning building, I don my really cool hard hat and my ability to breathe inside my office environment, which burns between 500 and 800 degrees because I'm what? A firefighter. Now, when I knock that fire down, I get back on my big red truck and I roll back to the station house. Do I need to have all that PPE? The easy answer is no, of course not, because it's task-based. We're knowingly going into a thermal environment and we're going to dress accordingly. In our world, when do we have to have it on? Well, if we could predict when these accidents were going to happen, we just wouldn't be there. These are accidental exposures, so in order to protect ourselves, we must have a baseline of protection at all times. So the answer is, I have to wear my flame-resistant arc-rated clothing all day, every day, when I'm working in and around energized equipment, and we are electrical utility workers, and that's the large majority of what we are paid to do. But we have to remember we are not impervious to injury. We are not Superman. You're not going to be able to don this 5.5, 6 ounce shirt, these 10, 12 ounce denim things and go into burning buildings and saving babies. As we understand in the hierarchy of controls or the hierarchy of safety, this is the least effective control, PPE. But it is the only control when you're having an arcing fault, because the fact that you have an arc, you can no longer eliminate it. You can't substitute for it. Engineering controls are gone by the wayside. Admin ain't going to help you right now. All you have is your PPE, so it's the least effective but the last line of defense. Think about it this way. Another good analogy, when you look at the improvements we've made in auto safety for those who inhabit automobiles, has been dramatic in the last 5 to 10 years. Take this little smart car, for example. It lives in the land of these behemoths, but the engineering that's built into it, that's a titanium frame to provide protection for those who occupy that little smart car. It also, believe it or not, has 8 airbags. God forbid if they all go off at the same time, but that's there in addition to protect the occupants. We have cars now that have the ability to stop you from going into the opposing lane when it's occupied in your blind spot. It will alert you. We have the ability now with sensor arrays to brake, to park. I can get my truck to put my boat in the water. All this is engineering. So why do we still rely on 70-year-old technology to protect us? Why is it still the law to click it or ticket? Because what? It's a proven life-saving piece of equipment. It is literally your last line of defense when everything else goes wrong, because no matter how bad it is on this side of the windshield, it's better than 25 feet down that asphalt. Ask any highway patrol officer survivability of ejection accidents. It's virtually nil. That is the same as your flame-resistant arc-rated clothing in front of that arc flash. It is your last line of defense, but it is going to save your life and stop you from catching fire and continue to burn. And just like that safety belt, it doesn't work unless you're wearing it properly. What do I mean by that? I'm going to date myself, but I remember my dad the first time safety belts were mandated and it became law in the new vehicle he was in. And that beeping noise drove him nuts. So what did he do? He eliminated the beeping noise. He clicked that safety belt behind him. That's the same kind of analogy when you think about we leave it in the truck, we leave our shirt draped behind our seat because it's too hot to put it on. We have it unbuttoned, we have it untucked. We are taking our safety belt and we are mitigating or minimizing its ability to protect us because we're not deploying it properly. So I say all that to say this. What am I trying to protect you against? I have alluded to it a number of times through the conversation. We're looking to mitigate burn. So let me just give you the basics of what we're talking about here. We measure burn in two ways. How deep did it get and how much of you got gotten? The severity and the extent. Severity, first degree, second degree, third degree, most people understand that nomenclature and know what I mean by how deep I am getting and how much damage I'm doing. In our world, we don't even measure first degree. I don't care about first degree. I'll take first degree all day long. Why? No medical intervention, okay? And you're going to heal up on your own. Those two key factors. That's sunburn. You're going to be uncomfortable for a few days, but some aloe vera and some thyme and you're going to heal up, you'll be fine. Second degree, I start measuring. Why? Second degree is the onset of a blister. Why do we worry about blisters? Blisters break and it's a pathway to what? Infection. So if I can minimize the area of second degree, hopefully it's a visit to the emergency room, a 4x4 gauze pad, some silver nitrate, some antibiotics, and go see your doc in a couple days. Because why? You're still going to heal up on your own, and now we're at minimal medical intervention. Third degree, we start getting really concerned because those two key factors I talked about are no longer available to us. You will not heal up on your own, and you're going to need massive amounts of medical intervention. Third degree burns means I've damaged the skin to the ability for it to regenerate on its own. So if there's enough of you to harvest, and that's the term, I am going to take parts of your buttocks and thighs typically and then strategically place those on those third degree burns so ultimately you'll leave my very sophisticated, expensive burn center in the next 15 to 30 days because you're going to need a lot of medical intervention for you to recover from that. The next we talk about is how much have you gotten. There's a huge difference between 15% body burn and 50% body burn, and it's not 35. It's quality of life, it's ongoing health issues. You've affected every major system in your body dramatically, and everything is fighting to sustain you at 50% body burn. So anything I can do to take first to second, second to, let me repeat that. Anything I can do to go from third to second, second to first, and first to none is going to dramatically affect the outcome. And we all know this. The burn data tells you this. But the burn data is talking about here is when we have 25% or less body burn in green, 50% or less body burn in yellow, and dramatic body burn we can see in red. And the big factor is age. What is happening in the trades? Are we getting younger? Are we getting older? Typically we're getting older. Who's doing a lot of the heavy lifting and the energized work? You're into that 30-39 category. You can see is when I hurt you badly with age, your chance of surviving drops dramatically. The other way to look at this is think about it. Everything in green across all age categories at less than 25% body burn, I'm almost 100% survivable. Well, what does that mean? That means I can damage a quarter of your largest organ, which is your skin, and I can get you to a special facility, you will survive almost 100%. So if I think about it, if you look at me now and I've properly deployed my flame-resistant arc-rated clothing system, I'm tucked in, I'm buttoned up, I'm rolled down, I'm secured at the wrist, is there 25% of me showing? If I have my rubbers and my leathers, and I have a hard hat on, is there 25% of me showing? I can't, if I'm deploying it correctly, it's almost impossible for me to cause a fatal interaction with an arcing fault. In fact, Across my career and across North America is where predominantly my information comes from. I'm not aware of one documented case of properly deployed PPE, flame-resistant arc-rated clothing, resulting in a fatality from an arc flash. The cost of this stuff is astronomical. Not even factoring in quality of life issues and that cost, just the cost alone in a burn center, 50% or greater body burn, which will occur if we have clothing ignition, is going to cost at a minimum $1 million. You're going to write a check for $1 million and you're going to spend the next 30 to 45 days if you are lucky enough to leave under your own power. What we typically see with catastrophic body burns in excess of 40, 50% is we don't run the cost typically that high because the survival rate is extremely low. Thankfully, things changed. Early on, when I started this conversation, I said I got started back in 1995 when we were primarily dealing with oil and gas in flame-resistant clothing. In the early 90s, we knew not to wear meltables. In fact, they allowed for 11-ounce cotton to be utilized in utilities as part of 1910-269. We said no meltables. We understood that, but it was very hard to find an 11-ounce or heavier cotton work shirt that wasn't called a jacket. So what happened there? Well, we wore 100% cotton denim, and then we wore lightweight, flame-resistant shirts. Well, all you had is a whole bunch of fuel from the waist down, and you had some FR protection from the waist up. So remember going back to that red, yellow, and green burn injury column? You basically were wearing fuel from the waist down. All that changed back in 2014. It literally seems like a blink of an eye. But that's going back almost, 8 years now. We finally said in 1910-269 a reasonable estimate of the incident energy that you're up against and protect yourself accordingly, with the outermost layer being flame resistant and arc rated. That resulted in 20 saved lives and 118 serious injuries per year. That was the cost of not doing that back in the day. In our general industry side of it, we have NFPA 70E, and even though this is not applied directly to our utility community, we did uplift a lot of that language when it came to putting together our flame-resistant arc rating clothing in 1910-269. Also, that's where your terminology, Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, and Cat 4, that's where that comes from, and that's really been the default in utilities now for really the last decade, is that Cat 2 daily wear. That's where it was lifted from. So here I just want to demonstrate again what the hazard is. The hazard is clothing ignition. That is a relatively small arc flash. That arc flash is 4.1 calories of incident energy. That is cotton clothing instantaneously catching fire. Duck, dive, dodge is not going to get you out of the way. You need to have it on, and it needs to be deployed properly in order to protect you. So what does that look like? Exact same outfit, this just happens to be arc rated. Completely different outcomes. So when we talk about life-saving pieces of equipment, this is what we mean. I take something in the previous demonstration that was life-altering and potentially fatal, and I make it 100% survivable with mitigating a lot of that potential injury by taking clothing ignition out of the equation. Even if we slow it down, you'll get a better idea. This is 3,000 frames a second. You'll get an idea in this 4.5 calorie arc just how dynamic that event is. And when I say I'm only protecting you from igniting, that's what I mean. I can't protect you against the acoustic energy, the concussive force, the molten metal that's coming out of that box that's turning into 1900 degrees of molten copper traveling 750 miles an hour. I'm just stopping you from igniting. The other thing that incident energy, a reasonable estimate of incident energy gives us, is also tells you as the electrician how big a bomb you're standing in front of. That would be good to know. just like you prepare for any kind of inclement weather. If it's going to rain today, is it a gentle spring shower or is it a torrential downpour? Because you have PPE for both. I have a lightweight raincoat or I have my rain gear. Which one are you going to wear? It depends on the weather report, depends on what's happening. That's what our arc flash studies and that incident energy prepares you for, is how big a bomb you're standing in front of. Is it going to be like a firecracker or is it going to be 4 sticks of dynamite? That's what your arc flash analysis tells you, and that's what those labels tell you, and that's what that reasonable estimate of the incident energy is going to prepare you for. Because if I'm sitting in a bucket and I'm 5 cals or less on my transmission lines, or am I in a substation where I have 35 calories of exposure on some switching gear, I'm going to dress accordingly. OSHA says you shall protect your people. Our standards are our best practices. That's the how-to, that's your playbook. And then we have industry with best practices. And they all come together to give you a game plan in order to protect your people. So you have an estimate of your incident energies. Is it single layer garments? What if it's greater than that 8 cals? What if it's greater than that magic Cat 2 we all talk about? Well, you can get some distance and lower that, or you can provide layering and increase your protection. And we'll talk about what that looks like. So I'm going to introduce you here. This is an electrical worker. This is a piece of, this is a meter bank he was working on back in 2001. Yes, it's a little dated, but it's still very pertinent. That's his arc-rated shirt. The charcoal briquette there on the right is his leather keepers, protectors, his rubber gloves for shock protection. And back in those days, it was safety glasses. There weren't even any necessarily hard hats and face shields utilized back in 2001. That's his cotton t-shirt he was wearing underneath, which is, by all the standards and regulations, perfectly allowable. We have natural fibers underneath our flame-resistant arc-rated garments, because why? They'll give you a little bit of additional insulation, but key is they won't melt, drip, and add to the injury as long as what? The outer layer stays intact. What you're seeing here is charring. That's the predecessor to what? Ignition. How did that happen? You look at where all the energy came from. He's starting to break open on that right shoulder, because why? The meter he was working on, he had de-energized. The meter to his immediate right was the one that failed. So here you have an electrician doing everything right, and the piece of equipment to his right just decides it's its day to quit. And it's going to go to arcing fault. All the energy comes into the right, starts to overwhelm his outer layer, and this is where base layers and natural fibers can potentially cause injury. Is there enough residual energy left over after breaking through that outer layer to potentially ignite? That is darn close. And we have a name for it because we do have it happen enough to where it's the chimney effect. It's burning inside your flame-resistant arc-rated clothing, because that natural layer, aka fuel, has no FR properties. It's just fuel waiting for an ignition source, and if there's enough left over, it could potentially ignite. Now, I share this image for 2 reasons. One, you can see where his safety glasses started just to melt to his head. You can see he squinted really hard. All that energy still passed through those safety glasses. But really, this is 1st degree, some sites 2nd degree. The key component is everything from the neckline down, where his flame-resistant arc-rated clothing was deployed, is undamaged. This is it working perfectly. The areas that didn't have any protection received a little bit of damage, but because there was no ignition and there was no burning cotton and that energy going up, he's relatively, objectively unharmed after being in that incident. So do non-FR base layers ignite? Yes. When we are untucked and we are unbuttoned and we expose that non-FR base layer, can they ignite? Yes. In this incident here, we have a cotton t-shirt, we have an untucked flame-resistant arc-rated shirt, and when we show you from the back view, you'll see all that off-gassing that you see there is smoldering cotton. It hasn't caught fire completely, but it's smoldering. You can see that it's starting to burn underneath his shirt. There's just not enough air yet there to have a full-on fire, but that's smoldering at 400 degrees. That's about 3 to 4 seconds before you have that third-degree burn to where you're going to spend significant time in a burn unit having skin grafting. What about meltables underneath? We've had this movement because, quote unquote, the biggest concern about flame-resistant arc-rated clothing is it's hot and uncomfortable. So you have young folks coming into the trades who, guess what? When I'm at the gym, I'm hot and uncomfortable. What do I wear at the gym? We wear performance fabrics. Performance fabrics are lightweight, 100% synthetics that provide some moisture management and some cooling. So now I deploy that underneath my flame-resistant arc-rated shirt. What's going to happen? All that radiant heat is going to pass through that outer layer. It's going to hit that lightweight plastic and it's going to melt it to the wearer. You are literally going to shrink wrap yourself in molten plastic and cause horrific injuries that don't need to have happened. That's why you wear natural fibers. So, layering to meet the hazards. What's the basics? Why would I think about layering? Well, we've just shown you to where what you wear underneath could be exposed. We've also talked about working on higher incident energies and still maintaining lightweight materials. So how do we do that? 2 lightweight arc rays, I make my base layer also part of my protective system. Because why? Break open is real in what we do, especially on the utility side. The incident energies, it doesn't close as quick. We're closer than we thought. So what I am thinking is a 7 cal exposure. If that stays longer than the 2 cycles it was calculated at, and it goes 4, 6, or 8, how much incident energy? That's calculated 18 inches. What if I'm at 12 inches? What if I'm at 6 inches? How much incident energy? I can overwhelm my outer layer. What does that result in? If I'm wearing plastic, that's what it results in. Those scars there are liquefied polyester being driven into that electrician's skin at concussive forces of 2,200 square foot-pounds. So I liquefy the plastic underneath my perfectly good shirt that's being overwhelmed in that incident, and now I'm causing unnecessary injury. Also, who wants to be the underwear police at your facility? Why is that important? Well, let's just simplify it. Let's say everybody's wearing a white cotton t-shirt. How do I know that? Because my crew sitting in front of me has that white little V. All those white V's mean that that's all 100% cotton, right? Can you get 80-20? Can you get 50-50? Can you get 60-40? Can you get any other ratio of cotton and polyester in a white t-shirt? Absolutely. So how do you know as the safety pro that your team is not introducing meltables into their protective system? Also, can you see that giant logo full of meltable inks that's right underneath at the surface there? What's going to happen to all those meltable inks in an arc flash? Well, they're going to do what plastics do, and they're going to melt and begin to flow. Could they cause injury? Potentially. Our standards that govern what we do knew you're going to be in incident energies greater than your PPE. They wrote guidelines for you working on incident energies greater than what your outer layer is. They talk about layering up to protect to those systems. So what does that look like? 70E has a whole annex on it. Here's my flame-resistant arc-rated base layers. They come in short sleeve and long sleeve. One's a systems approach, and one of them is just eliminating fuel. If I have a short sleeve base layer, I've eliminated fuel, I'm no longer concerned about anything in my PPE system that could potentially ignite and cause me injury. If I want to work on systems greater than the 8 cals that I'm wearing, if I go to a long sleeve system and I test this over this, and let's say it's 24 calories. This here is 18 calories. Now I can work on systems up to what? 18 calories, because that's my lowest ATPV, and I've been able to do that in 2 lightweight layers. I'm not having to climb into a flash suit in order to do incident energies greater than my single layer outer layer. If we wear short sleeves, we don't have the systems approach. That's no longer 24, that's back to 8. Why? Because I'm single layer from my wrist to elbow, so I'm back at 8 cals. Can I work on that 10 cal system? No. So we have to do a little bit of homework. We have to understand how layering systems work and make the decision. But short sleeve FR, AR base layers eliminate fuel. We've done a lot of work. This is a little dated. It's about 150 different testing combos. We're closer to 300 plus right now. There's a lot of data from a lot of other good, reputable companies who are doing this on a constant basis. There's even data on mixing and matching manufacturers out there. So get a hold of your provider. If you're looking to do that, it can be done. It can be accomplished relatively easily. Just remember, like I said, whatever your system's approach is, your actual arc rating is the lowest ATPV in your system. If you're wearing short sleeves and both layers are flame resistant arc rated, you're still whatever the single weight is on your shirt. If I climb into a coverall over my base layers, my pants, and my coverall pants is going to be pretty high. My shirt and my coverall is going to be higher, but it's probably going to be the lowest of the two, just because weight factors in to these results pretty significantly. So use and training, you've done all this work, you've selected your proper flame resistant arc rated garments. The regulations now demand that we train you on and document that you've had training on PPE. 1910-132 clearly spells that out, and this is where we step in and talk about how to properly don and doff it. That's our fancy way of saying putting it on and taking it off. Yes, we have to train folks on that, and in fact, in some facilities, because of special stipulations and special processes, they have to be very conscious of where they take garments off and put garments on. We have to really educate you on what the limitations are. As I said earlier, you're not Superman in a 7-ounce work shirt and 12-ounce denim just because you have FR, AR properties. Then we have to teach you on the proper care and maintenance, and we'll talk about that, and then document that you've all had this training so you know how to properly do it. And here's an easy 2-step approach. This is what you all need to look like when you go out into the field. It's proper interfacing, 1506. A shirt is tucked into a pant. Sleeves are rolled down and secured, button up to the neck, not at the neck, but to the neck. This is how you all look when I come visit you. Okay, for various degrees of comfort, this is the way we've always done it. Untucked, rolled up. Why is that a concern? Because I forget to roll it down when I actually go energize. I'm going to rely on my gauntlets to protect me there, and I'm going to keep them rolled up. Untucked, that arcing fall goes to the ground. Hot air rises. It's going to blouse and go up underneath. If I'm wearing my white non-FR 100% cotton t-shirt as I'm allowed to, aka fuel, I'm now exposing that to energy that I don't need to expose it to. Coming back from break, coming back from doing something non-energized, I'm unbuttoned, I go up in the bucket, I throw all my fall protection on, I forget to button myself. Happens all the time. What can go wrong here? Think about it. I have a very good, well-funded, flame-resistant, arc-rated clothing program. I outfit all my guys, get 5 shirts, 5 pants, rain gear, cold weather gear. That's a very expensive, very good, arc-rated brown duck jacket, about 40 cals of protection. During the cold months, I'm going to wear that. Now, it's a little bit colder. I've looked at the forecast. I grab a hoodie. I'm going to wear it underneath for extra insulation. Is that a hoodie that's authorized by the program where it has flame-resistant arc-rated properties, or is that hoodie from the local superstore to wear what? I just grabbed it off the back of the door, threw it underneath because I want to be a little bit warmer. Well, as I'm working throughout the day, I'm going to get hot. We don't want to get hot and sweaty when it's cold out, so I'm going to take off my arc-rated jacket. Now, I'm exposing that hoodie. Did I forget that I grabbed that hoodie from home? Is it a proper hoodie? Is it flame resistant arc rated? We see mistakes like that happen all the time because why? We forget throughout the workday. We're occupied and focused on what the task is. I take my jacket off and now I have a non-FR hoodie exposed to potential incident energy. Don't forget about the fact, even if I'm deploying that properly, look at that non-FR hoodie, look at all that fuel that's sitting on the back of my neck. In that arcing fault, we're not going to not react. So I am going to turn away from that exposure and I'm going to put that big hunk of potential fuel right into the path of that arcing fault and it could ignite. What does that mean? That's not a good outcome. What do we wear under our hard hats? What do we wear on cold days? What do we wear on hot days? Do we wear bandanas? Are those bandanas have FR properties or are they 50-50, 100% polyester, cotton, aka fuel? We throw a ball cap on, put that underneath our hard hat, turn it backwards, put it on. Does that ball cap have any FR properties? What about watch caps, skull caps? Everything else that you put under there has to have FR properties because what happens in that arcing fault when all that heat goes up underneath into your hard hat and in and around your harness? Could it potentially cause unnecessary harm? Just areas to where great programs could be compromised. What's wrong here? Again, I'm out in the field. I'm really excited to see my triangle being deployed and utilized by this crew. And then I look at what he's wearing and how he's wearing it. That shirt, is it even arc rated? I have no idea. If it is arc rated, is it a reasonable estimate to the incident energy? If that's an 8 cal shirt and that's a 5 cal undergarment and he's in a 6 cal exposure, did he just compromise himself unnecessarily? What about his counterpart over here? We talked about blousing. We talked about those arcs going to the ground and all that energy coming up. We have no idea what's being worn underneath. All this could be a great, well-funded, safe program, and all we've done is compromise it by not deploying it properly. Wearing the correct base layers underneath your FR garments is important. That includes if you are going the non-FR route, make sure they're natural fibers. That is typically 100% cotton, that's wool in the winter times, and it can even be silk. Wear it correctly, buttoned up to the neck. Two lightweight FR garments can be more protective and more comfortable than heavier layers. It's also easier to manage. If you think about it, go back to my crew and those white V's. Now I turn them all into triangles or any other FR indicator that's easily for me to spot that everybody is safe, or at least safer than the first scenario that we talked about. Right there, there's your identifier. So bottom line, wear it correctly, zipped, buttoned, and tucked. Couple scenarios. The two pictures that you see on the right. We know this electrician had the proper gear. Why? Because when the EMTs came in to get him on the gurney to transport him to the burn center, they noted that he had an arc-rated shirt, hard hat, face shield, rubbers and leathers because they were sitting on the table beside him. He was also wearing a arc-rated base layer because you can see all the damage clearly stopped right there at mid-bicep because when he doffed his outer layer, he had a flame-resistant arc-rated base layer underneath. What would cause an electrician to bring all that gear, then doff it? Well, what ended up happening was he was working in a facility, he was working on an MCC. We know this because when he went to the back panel, we saw that he had locked out MCC 6. When he came back to MCC 6, he doffed all his PPE. Why? Because in his mind, he was working what? De-energized. In a split second, his failure to verify that he was de-energized ended his career. How do we know that? These are 3rd degree and 4th degree burns on that hand. That hand pictured 3 days later, most of those digits are gone and most of the palm is gone. He will never turn a wrench again. That one mistake and in that split second, that career was over. When I talk to my JTCs and when I talk to my IBW folks and when I ask them how much does it cost to get through my apprenticeship, to get a couple, 3 years into the field where I'm qualified to do this type of energized work, The average number that I get is about $250,000 in training that's literally wiped out in a blink of an eye. And it never had to be if he had followed the correct procedures. And even if he didn't, if he had been wearing his rubbers and leathers and his teeth, he mitigates those injuries. He takes first down to none, he takes third down to second, he takes second down to one. You take something that potentially could save that career. Instead, it's over. On the left here, we have a legacy sticker. This sticker adorns every hard hat in a Southern California utility. July 2007, Journeyman 1, Helper 1 are working on surface level switching gear on the side of a highway. Day 2, Journeyman 2 and Helper 2 are going to join Journeyman 1 and Helper 1 because they're going to finish the job from day 1, and they've got subsequent jobs down the side of that highway to get completed. Unrelatedly, the on-site safety guy takes crew 1 away to have a different discussion so they don't have to have their tailgate. And during that tailgate, they would have discussed the status of how the gear was left by Journeyman 1 and Helper 1. That never happened. Hence, the crew from day 2, Journeyman 2, Helper 2, does not realize that the equipment has been energized. So when they're going into the gear because they need to move this job along to get to the other jobs that they've got lined up, this is the sequence of events. The helper was putting a little fan up in the corner of that little Quonset hut to get some air circulating because it's July in Southern California. The journeymen, when they worked de-energized, were allowed to be untucked, unbuttoned, rolled up, 100% company cotton t-shirt underneath. Whatever they were doing caused an arcing fault. The arcing fault projected the helper, who was standing at the door, about 20 feet down the side of the highway, thankfully not onto the highway. He was cut and bruised from hitting all that loose shale type rock on the side of the highway. The journeyman took the brunt of the arcing fault, immediately ignited his 100% cotton aka fuel shirt. His PPE, because it wasn't deployed properly, his arc raised shirt could only be recognized where there was double layers. Basically where he had rolled it up, where the placket, collar, some of the stitching, you could see the outline of the shirt, but because it wasn't deployed properly, the arc basically vaporized a large majority of it. 56 years old, 6 months from retirement, dies on the operating table from those injuries. That is a legacy sticker to his brothers and sisters in the trade to always remember it's energized until you determine that it's not. So you always are tucked in, buttoned, and rolled. We've got some time here for a quick bonus. Not everybody has the benefit of working in always sunny, beautiful conditions like we have here today. We do have inclement weather. We do have other areas to where we have to wear additional PPE, like working on the side of the road. Not everybody is wearing Category 2 high-vis, flame-resistant arc-raised shirts. Some of you all have to doff and don vests as needed. Rain gear and vests, very important to do a quick check. Vests, really easy. They don't need to be equal to the incident energy that you're up against, but they do have to have an arc rating. It's okay to have an arc-rated vest that is 3 or 4 calories of incident energy because the shirt that is underneath the vest is doing all the work. But it does need to be arc-rated so it doesn't catch fire and continue to burn. So that being said, be very, very cautious of vests that are only determined to be flame resistant to, for example, ASTM 6413. They will have terminology such as it self-extinguishes. These are very, very dangerous in arc flash situations because they have not been tested to your hazard. They can ignite, they can continue to burn. You'll have a big hunk of burning plastic sitting on your chest, again, causing unnecessary injury. So for your vests, ASTM 1506 and have an arc rating. For your rain gear, same mindset. There's rain gear being sold into the electrical community that only meets ASTM 6413. I won't get into the dynamics of what the test is and what it's showing and how they're able to market as FR, but do know this, they will fail miserably in an arc flash and cause unnecessary injury. The easiest way to look at this, If your rain gear costs less than $400, if your rain gear costs $150 for a jacket and a pant, you've got the wrong rain gear. Your rain gear should be in excess probably of about $400, $500 for a proper set of rain gear designed to protect against this hazard. So be very, very cautious. You'll see things, as I mentioned, ASTM 6413, self-extinguishing, ANSI. Well, you can't claim ANSI and FR to 6413. It's not one of the 6 standards that are allowed to be high-vis and FR. It has to be ASTM 1506. It has to be ASTM 2733, ASTM 1891, NFPA 2112, NFPA 1977, and 2302 is thrown in there also, but it can't be a standalone. All that being said, you'll see labels like this. You'll see things like a short sleeve, high vis, arc rated shirt is a oxymoron, so to speak. Why? There's no way that's a base layer. It's high vis. It's designed to be worn on the outside, and you should never see a short sleeve arc rated shirt as a single layer. We see that in marketing and people's brochures all the time. This also goes through to tell you, if you read the fine print, it'll tell you that it's non-FR. Then it will tell you that it's FR. It'll also tell you that this is self-distinguishing properties diminished with washing. Self-extinguishing properties diminishing with washing. If this is on rain gear, this is literally rain gear you can't get wet. As I wrap up here, so a couple things to help you walk through evaluating good quality FR manufacturers, providers, your channel. Ask for the manufacturer's guarantee in writing on their letterhead and make sure it's not connected to a standard. Why do I say that? The standards for determining arc rating are 3 washes to 25 launderings. Are you ever going to launder your shirt more than 3 or 25 times? Absolutely. These are designed to last anywhere from 2 to 3 years. That's definitely going to suck well past 25 launderings. So if it's attached to a standard, the guarantee is virtually meaningless. So make sure it's guaranteed for the life of that garment. Ask for the test data. It should be very easy and ready available. And then make sure that you go in and check that they're accurate. Why do I say that? There are folks in the industry who will claim to have an arc rating from a reputable source, and they've literally changed the outcome. So make sure you go in and research that the certifications and everything is up to date, so trust your supply source. Specify that only those certified compliant garments for your hazards are allowed on site. AKA, make sure that you monitor vests, you monitor rain gear, anything else that's going to go on top of or underneath your very well-funded and solid flame-resistant arc-rated clothing program. And then periodically police it. It doesn't take, as you have ownership change, leadership change, and those nuances as we go through. What started out really solid 2-3 years ago may have some variance as you go through it. So periodically police your program for compliance and work with proven supply chain partners. This is key, not when everything is going well. This is key when the rubber meets the road and you have to use my garments as life-saving pieces of equipment. Everybody's going to get called and be able to be held accountable. Make sure you can hold your supply chain accountable. Make sure that that 1-800 number is ringing somewhere local enough that you're confident that you can get the response needed. You can get the PhDs, the technical folks, the data is readily available. We keep all our test data for up to 10 years. We test on 1, we test on 100. We're able to work to get to the thermographic level. We can tell you how hot it got, what secondary accelerants were involved, and did the fabric do as advertised and as promised to protect your folks. So again, work with a proven supply chain partners so that when things do get sideways, that you have the resources that are accountable and answerable to that. A lot of resources, a little bit of an advertisement on what we do. Selection, use, care, and maintenance is summarized in our Bulwark FR handbook. It covers all industries. Our industry update covers all commercially viable fabrics utilized here in North America. Even ones that we don't utilize, there's information in there. It's an easy to go to find. That's my contact information. That's our website. Again, I have the luxury of being able to comment and take my experience, so you don't necessarily have to be using my stuff for me to answer your email, for me to answer your phone call. I'll be happy to help. So with that, Brent, thank you. Thank you to the folks for the electric culture of safety. It is definitely the, excuse me, the jumping off point. It's a great organic growth mechanism that's helping the industry. So I appreciate your time, and thank you everybody out there watching and listening.